Hello, and good evening, and welcome to UK Crime Book Club. This evening, I'm absolutely I can't get my words out. I'm delighted to be joined by Ashley Tate, all the way from Canada, near
Canada.
Lake Ontario. So, yeah, it's the afternoon there, and we're in dismal 7 p.m. in England. But yeah, so thank you for joining us, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
This is your debut novel. You were an editor before for many years before this, and we'll come back to that later. But would you like to tell us in your own words about 27 Minutes?
Sure. It's a thriller about grief and long buried secrets. And finally, answering this one question that's kind of haunted this very small, very claustrophobic town for the last decade. On the night of a fatal car crash, that killed the town's golden girl, why did it take her brother, who was driving the car, 27 minutes to call for help when, had he called earlier, she might still be alive?
Yeah, and that is the question, isn't it? As I said to you before we came on air, I finished reading it last night, and whoa, it's one you're going to remember for a long time.
Thank you.
It was a very personal theme that inspired you to write this book. And we chatted before about, whether you're happy to share that, and you are happy to sort of share the sort of, I don't think it's not I guess it is an inspiration, isn't it, to what the book?
Yeah, I was inspired to write this after my mother died. She passed away in 2018 of pancreatic cancer, which was very quick and very traumatic for my family. And I'd always written, and I needed something to help me kind of deal with these really overwhelming feelings of grief. I felt really afraid, and I felt like the rug had been pulled out from underneath me. It really, really shook me, and I needed to channel that into something. And I had this idea of this twist for a long time, kind of sitting on my shoulder. So it was those two things that kind of had to happen, come together, that I wrote the first draft of this book.
Yeah, I mean, it's the book we start off by the sort of the climax of the book of the accident. We find out right from the start, don't we, that that something bad happens, and then we sort of go 10 years forwards to life in the village town where the aftermath of the accident has happened. So you've got, as you said, you've got the golden girl Phoebe, who was killed. Her brother Grant was driving, and then there's Becca, who was a friend. I'm going to say friend.
Yeah.
And then there's the other family that are the other dynamic, which we'll talk about in a minute, was the sibling dynamics, which I found really, really interesting. And then you've got the other siblings, who are June and Wyatt, who are another sort of couple of siblings that live in the town. They're all sort of, you are in a small town, they're all joined up together, but there's a real dysfunctional and big dynamic, isn't there, between the four of them without anybody else from the outside?
Right. Yes, these four people are dramatically impacted by the night of this accident 10 years ago in very different ways. With June and Wyatt, who are brother and sister, he was a very troubled, I guess, teenager, and he left the same night, but he's back. And so, and it's leading up to a memorial that is being held in Phoebe's honor. At the time of her death, her mother just couldn't stand to, have a funeral. It was just too much. So 10 years later, a decennial, and these four characters are faced with what happened 10 years ago, and they start to unravel, and all the secrets come out. And I wanted to kind of show how long grief lasts, because it lasts forever,
Yeah, definitely. And they are, as you say, I mean, it was such a traumatic event that happened, and they've been so impacted that like life really hasn't moved on, has it, at all for them? They've become almost, I felt like it was really claustrophobic. It felt like they were almost stuck in this sort of time zone of grief and unresolved matters, I think we can say.
Right.
And yeah, so I was really interested how you managed to get that sort of, that really claustrophobic feeling in the writing.
Well, thank you for saying that, because that I absolutely wanted to get that across. I think with setting, with this very small town, and I love setting, I love writing setting. I think it's my favorite thing to write. It's what I spend a lot of time thinking about. But then exactly what you said, this feeling of being stuck is exactly what I wanted to write about, because that's how I felt when my mom died. And the thing is that you feel stuck, and you know that nothing is going to bring them back. And so you kind of start, you feel stuck, but you kind of also start this whole new life. And it's just really, it really changes you, and it changes people, and it can have long lasting effects. The claustrophobia, I think, it's just so immersive, these feelings of trauma and grief and loss and regret, and all those kind of hard feelings.
And I think as well for them, it's so unsolved, isn't it? There's still so many questions about what happened on that night, and only two people really know what happened. There's lots of people who come in throughout the book, isn't there? Who knew things, because there was a party. So I think that's not giving away too much.
Right.
There's a party that happened, and most of the people who are involved are involved in the party in some way, whether they were there or whether they, it was around them. So it's definitely around this sort of group of friends, and I guess classmates, isn't it? Because they weren't all friendly.
No.
I think it's fair to say.
No.
And like I said, it's so unresolved that only the two people know exactly what happened on that night. And then the book really sort of leads us through the unraveling of that, doesn't it? To get to the point of the day of the memorial. And I sort of, the setting, I think as well, was that place, I can't remember, I know I've got Wilbur.
It's West Wilmer, completely fictional.
Is it? Was there anywhere that you sort of thought of when you were writing it?
Yeah. So I grew up in a city. I grew up in Toronto, but my mother, who is, in so much of the story, just, the catalyst of it, but she grew up in a tiny town of 250 people on a farm. Wow. And on a tiny island. I mean, just, it couldn't get any smaller. Yeah. And I spent a lot of my summers there growing up, and it had such an impact on me. I think probably because it was so different from the city, but the summers that I spent there on this farm that my grandfather had built in this rural town of 250 people really impacted me at a time when you're a child that these things really affect you. Yeah. And so it's a fictional town, but it's very much based on this town that my mom grew up in. I mean, the dairy bar on the side of the highway, and the silos, and the, patchwork fields, and all those things are very real.
It felt very real. I think sometimes you can really feel if a setting is based on a real place. Do you know what I mean? You could, I mean, sometimes the place yourself, so that becomes even more real. But I think it's really interesting when you could, I think that it all added to that sort of, because it didn't feel like a bad place to live, but it did feel like quite a remote place to live that didn't sort of have an awful lot going in it to get my words out. So I think that sort of adds to the whole feel of it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I love small towns. I love the close-knit community, which, you know, can sometimes then become something that's not so great when it's hard to escape what, you know, your past. But I really wanted it to be fictional. And I remember talking to my editors about, is this set in the States? Is this set in Canada? And I said, no, it's not. It's kind of just set in North America. I wanted people to be able to, I didn't want to use a real place because I wanted people to be able to see themselves there. And what's interesting is seeing readers who just assume, oh, this is in Alabama, or, oh, this is in Ontario, like it's a real place. So that's been nice, although it's not. It's completely fictional.
No, I think it does. It's you don't want it to be so realistic that people like know where it is, or, you know,
right.
But actually realistic enough that people can, like you say, go there, because I think you do really go there. And you said how important setting is to you when you're writing. Is that sort of one of the first things that you sort of think about when you start?
Yeah, it is. And I just love it. When I'm reading, I mean, as an avid reader, that's how I feel really in a story, is if I can picture myself there. So for me, setting is extremely important. I spend a lot of time on it. I love it. And I find that I write a lot of kind of remote, rural type things. I can't imagine writing about a city, maybe one day. But I really love remote, claustrophobic, kind of tense settings.
It really does add, doesn't it, to the tenseness and the suspense. I think the smaller the place, the more sort of difficult it is to get away from the, you know, whether it's claustrophobia of a place being small and close knit, or just small because you can't escape it, or it's really really interesting, especially with crime and thrillers. I think it's even more part of the plot, isn't it? It becomes very much part of the plot, and how you know.
I totally think so, and it does add tension, because you can't get lost. You can't you can't hide. Everyone knows you. Everyone knows everything about you. You can't run away. So yeah.
I've got some hellos to say. So we've got hi from Sam and Sarah, and I think there was there was Laura, and Laura's reading it on something called Pigeonhole. I don't know if you have that.
Oh yeah, I do. I've learned what that is. Yeah.
And so she's on she says she's comment properly when she's home in a bit. She's loving it.
Oh, good.
And she's reading on Pigeonhole. It's got 6 staves. I think you get a stave a day or something. I think you get like a part a day, and you read it. I did it ages ago.
It sounds really, and it sounds incredible. Such a unique idea.
Yeah, no, it's really, I think a lot of people really it's a really interesting way to get sort of new books, you know, into readers, and they can read them in bits as well.
Right.
So,
right.
And Sarah's asking, do you keep notes on a spreadsheet for when you're writing?
No, I'm a pantser. So my writing process is pretty chaotic. I wish that I was a plotter. I really do. I've tried, and it just doesn't work for me. I usually will start with the ending and the setting. Those are kind of the two things. And then I just have to kind of start and see where the characters go. But I desperately wish that I could keep a spreadsheet. I have kind of Post-it notes everywhere that I end up never looking at again, and it's chaos.
Well, I mean, it really doesn't feel like that when you're reading it. So, I mean, it works. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It has to work. Because I thought that there's quite a lot of sort of quite big characters in this book, isn't there? There's quite a few, you know, there's even just with the 2 groups of siblings, but then you've got Becca, who's a big character. You've got sort of other characters that come in, like Harley, and then you've got, going back, you've got Wyatt's mum and Wyatt's dad and the others. So the sort of those characters, which are sort of not as big. But I just wondered, was it difficult to plot with quite a few, several, and having the different perspectives written from those characters? Was that difficult?
Well, the book went through a lot of revisions, a lot. And a lot of those kind of secondary characters were really added and fleshed out through the revisions. So the very, very first draft, which is probably 5% of what, it's ended up being, I only had June and Grant as their perspectives. It was told from their perspectives. And then I kind of did a full rewrite and then added Becca and Wyatt. And then just through like many drafts, added more and more. My editors really liked the flashbacks. So I added more of those. And then Phoebe's character was also fleshed out a little bit more through revisions. But a lot of that kind of the complexity of the, secondary characters was definitely just added on. Yeah. It didn't start out like that.
Because the complexities of their relationships is really important, and really important to their sort of retelling of what happened, and actually almost of telling what happens when they're not in the flashbacks but in the past, when we're going, we're backwards and forwards. But it doesn't feel like that. I didn't feel like I was going backwards and forwards. It felt really natural, which was, I just thought that was really clever.
Thank you.
Because so was there a character that I've got my question here was, did you have a favorite to write, and which one caused you the most problems?
I did. My favorite to write was definitely Wyatt. And I don't know. It's funny because I've said this now a couple times. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I don't really like Becca.
No, I didn't really like her either.
and I think she's definitely the one that people are reacting to the most.
Yeah.
I didn't really like her. I mean, she's necessary for the story, and I don't wish her any ill will. I want her to find happiness in life, but I didn't like her very much. But one of my editors loved her.
Really?
And just found her very sympathetic, and so, which is great. I mean, it's subjective, right? But my favorite was Wyatt for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't say. Just Becca I can talk about. But I think, I just found her problematic in as much as I wanted to feel sorry for her because of what had happened, but then I just couldn't, because I don't know.
You want to just shake her. You want to just shake her.
Laura said Becca is nuttier than a bag of nuts.
Yeah. Becca is very stuck.
Yeah, really more than any of them.
Yeah.
And part of that is of her own making, but part of it isn't. And that was the bit that I sort of wanted her to be sympathetic with her. But then I thought, should I be? And that was where I was really conflicted, because I wasn't sure whether I should be feeling sorry for her or not. So I thought that was really clever. And I guess that's up to you. I didn't want to. I didn't want to feel sorry for her, because
I know you want her to kind of wake up, and exactly. You want her to wake up and kind of take control. But on the other hand, something terrible did happen to her, and she keeps getting, overlooked in a small town. Yeah. So I don't know. It's up to you. It's up to the reader. Team Becca or not.
Yeah, Team Becca or not. So so did you have one that really caused you problems of writing, that you sort of really wanted in there, but I mean, or maybe somebody who didn't make it, was there somebody that, that caused you problems, or you wanted them to do something?
That's a good question. I'd say that perhaps the character that I had to really consider the most was Phoebe. And she's not in it as much, but she is very important to the story. And so the dynamic with her and her brother Grant was probably the trickiest one, because what's interesting, you write this book and you have these feelings, and then you put the book out in the world and you start to hear what other people think. And I probably shouldn't be surprised, but I've been surprised at how many people have really disliked Phoebe. Whereas for me, I feel very strongly for her. I feel it's tragic what's happened to her, but they think, why was she so controlling? And, what's her problem? And which I can see. So that relationship was possibly the most challenging.
Because Laura's saying on Pigeonhole, we're finding out a lot of the characters, possibly, we're finding a lot of the characters, possibly with the exception of June, hateful.
Right.
I can understand why they're like that, but having so many of a book, it was a challenge initially. So I didn't like Phoebe, sorry.
That's okay. Hey, it's okay. It's okay.
And I must admit, I was, June, I felt really a lot of sympathy for, very differently to Becca, because they are quite similar in a way, but June has not really made her misery, has she? It's just become on her, really. I think it's, she's really stuck because she's not like Popular Girl, was she? She sort of was on the sidelines, and Wyatt, I say, was in trouble, and her family was troubled. So I think she was the one I had the most empathy for, definitely.
I think that writing June, that she was the purest of them. Her grief was just so deep, and she was a victim of circumstance. And I do hear that a lot from readers, that the characters are flawed, to say the least. But that, June will kind of get sympathy and empathy from people.
But I think I really like a thriller or any book that has flawed characters, because I think it makes it more interesting, because you don't know which way they're going to go. You don't know whether they're going to always end up, or whether they're even reliable. Makes it. I want to be surprised when I'm reading. I don't want to know everything. So I think I like that with sort of dislikable characters, unlikable characters.
Right.
It makes it more interesting.
And I mean, to me, this is very much a story about grief, and grief is dark, and we're all flawed, and these characters are just extremely flawed. But they have a lot going on.
They do have a lot going on. You just touched on something that I was going to come back to later, but actually we'll do it now, because you said dark, and there are some bits in the book that are really dark, and I'm not going to give away what they are, but how did you find writing those? Was it quite a dark place to go to, or did you find it, it came along with the territory of the book?
I don't know what scenes you're talking about, but I really like dark things. They would have been probably my favorite parts. And I've always kind of been like that as a kid, interested in not like weird dark stuff, but
no,
but thrillers, and I was reading horror as a young child, and there's just something about fear that's really easy. It's not a difficult emotion. It's easy. And being scared can be fun, especially when you're, in the safety of your own home. Not that I think it's scary. I don't think this is a scary book at all.
Oh, no, it's not scary at all. It's just a bit, I don't know whether I would even say, a bit gruesome, maybe. A bit gory, maybe in places, but not scary. Not like hide under the covers sort of scary.
No. But there are some scenes that are a little bit tense,
but necessary. I think they are necessary as you get further through the book. You become which we're not going to go into, because we're not going to spoil it, especially for Laura, because I finished it last night, and you've got a treat, Laura. That's what I'm going to say. I was really the book is very character driven, isn't it? So you go into, they're really complex, and you really feel at the end of the book that like when you start off and you just have names, you sort of think, how am I going to remember? I think Laura touches on it, that you've got a lot of characters, and you think, well, how am I going to remember them all? But actually, they all become very rememberable quickly. because of how complex they are and the detail that you've put into them. Was that quite a challenge, or was that something that you always sort of wanted to do, was to make them very real?
Well, I take that as such a compliment. Thank you so much. It's a good question, and it's funny, when I was going through the revisions with my agent, she said, you're nailing the characterization, but what you need to work on is like the plot. She said, don't worry though, because the plot's easy and the characterization is hard. And I don't find that. I find the opposite. I find interiority easy. I find it easy. It comes easily to me. And then what I struggle with is the plot, which is, as a thriller writer is challenging. But so for them, I spend a lot of time with my characters in the beginning, a lot of time. I try to understand them. I mean, I make them up, but I try to understand what makes them tick and what they need. And I find that the best part of writing. Yeah. So yes, I spend a lot of time on that. I do, but it's what I enjoy. It's my favorite part. It's next to setting.
Because that is, I mean, quite often, when you have a thriller, like the plot is, and I think that's what makes this so different and so gripping. It's just that the characters are the plot, and everything is all encompassing. And Laura said it's gearing up for book of the year already. So there you go. That's
that's so nice. Thank you so much.
That's an accolade on the 31st of January.
Oh, it gives me like chills. Thank you.
And I was interested. Did you what research did you do? Do you sort of do research?
No.
No. Because you said you were a pantser, so I was thinking, well, maybe that means she doesn't do research either.
I am so in awe of writers that do heavy research. That seems really daunting to me. I think the only thing that I really looked up was the medical examiner report and what it's called. But no research.
Well, that's amazing. That's that's all in your head. That's that's insane.
Yeah, it's a little, it can be a little insane. Yeah.
And because is it easy then to, like, when you've got that much information in your head, is it easy to put it down at the end of the day and just go, or is it like when you're writing, is it all encompassing and all sort of there all the time?
It depends. It really does. With this book, because I didn't have an agent and I was really just writing it for myself, I would write when it struck me, when I felt like, okay, today I want to write, and then I would get it all out of my brain. And maybe I would write for 12 hours. I would really wrote in fits and starts. But I am working on, I'm really lucky because I signed a 2-book deal. So I'm working on the second book, and it's been a completely different experience because I have deadlines and I cannot write how I'm used to writing, which is when I feel like writing, it comes out. And this time I had to write a book in 6 months, which was really short. And I found it a completely different experience. So that was more sit down, write. Even if it doesn't come, you have to write.
Yeah.
And the draft ended up not being great, but it's finished. But so yes and no, it depends on the circumstance.
Yeah. Was that more that you said that the second book, quite often, authors will say that the second book can be a lot more challenging because you have that, you're not writing it for yourself, you're not writing it in the luxury of, and obviously I don't know when you finished 27 minutes, but I don't know whether there was much time between book 1 and book 2, so that can also be another pressure. But yeah, that must be quite a challenge when you've just finished, this one's just going out into the world, and then you've also just finished the second one.
It's been very strange. And for me, and I'm so lucky. I don't want it to sound like I'm complaining, because I'm not. It's a dream. Absolutely. but I am a very immersive writer, and I do, and because of the characters, I really kind of breathe these characters. So I did find it very difficult to be in and out of 27 minutes and then this other book. So what I've had to do is kind of focus on, I've kind of put the second one aside until all of this is done, so I can focus on 27 minutes, give it the attention that it needs, and then I'll turn to the second one. So it was difficult. And like you said, it's kind of across the board that the book following debut is a challenge. And it has been. It has been. But I'm excited about it. I am. There's parts of it that I'm really excited about getting back to.
Yeah, and I think probably as well is I guess there was I mean, you were an editor before, weren't you? I don't know if you still do that now, but whether you write full time, but that must be how did that feel, someone editing your work when you're used to doing, I don't know if you edited in fiction or whether you edited in something else. So was that a challenge for you?
I was I was an editor and editorial writer, so not fiction, but more magazines and lifestyle kind of content. So I think because of that, it was much easier for me. I didn't feel, I felt that I had written a book, but I don't know how to sell a book. I don't know how to market a book. I don't know how to package a book to be sold. And so I was absolutely fine to let the experts, my editors, give their feedback, and it wasn't a problem for me. I know some people are really, can be very precious about that, but I wasn't at all.
I guess not having it in your own, what you're used to writing, probably made it easier as well, that it wasn't your sort of bread and butter. You didn't, it wasn't something that you were sort of handing over to somebody else that you could do yourself, because it wasn't.
Right. Yeah, no, it's been a wonderful kind of process going through revisions, and I feel like I'm learning a lot. I don't have a background in creative writing. I learned pretty much everything on the job as an editorial writer. So now I'm shifting to fiction, and I am surrounded by these really brilliant editors, and my agent is incredible, and I'm learning a lot. So it's been great. I know it's a cliche, but it really has been a dream come true.
So Laura's saying the characters feel so real that it makes you want to read on to find out the truth. And she said, especially after every clue dropped, I might be a night owl on Sunday night to get the final stave read.
I love to hear it.
I can tell you definitely will.
Well, that's the point. So I'm so happy to hear that.
Sarah's asked a question. Do you have a favorite author?
I have a couple, yes. Growing up, I loved Stephen King and Margaret Atwood. As a Canadian, I mean, you have to love Margaret Atwood.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ian Reid. He's another Canadian author, and his genre is, it's almost like literary horror. It's a really kind of niche genre, but he's incredible. And then I'm really lucky. I've had the same writing partner for years, Ashley Tate, who's brilliant.
Oh, and The Push.
Yeah, The Push and the Whispers.
Yeah.
So she's amazing.
Yeah, no, her book is amazing. Yeah, I've read The Push, and that is amazing. I haven't read the second one.
Oh, it's good. It's great.
Yeah. Oh, that must be that must be really, really helpful to have someone that you can sort of, bounce things off of, and have the sort of, I guess you're pretty honest with each other, are you?
Yeah, it's such a unique, lovely relationship, because writing is really vulnerable, and sharing work is can be really scary. And so to have someone, and we've been doing this for a really long time, and to have someone that you really trust to say, here, I've written this thing, I've really tried, what do you think, is really great. And she's brilliant, so I'm lucky. And she's gone through this twice, so in a really big way.
Huge.
So, huge. So mine's a bit dialed back from that, but it's great. You kind of need it as a writer. You need someone who gets it, who understands, because there are ups and downs for sure.
And also it's quite an isolating job, isn't it, as well? And if you don't have people that you can trust, you know, it just becomes more isolating, I imagine.
100%. It is a really, it can be very lonely, and to have, you know, support is really important.
Did you said about you know, your favorite authors, and I was interested in because this is obviously your first book and it's a thriller. Have you got any ambitions to write any other genre? Would you like to write something else?
That's a good question, and I do think about it a lot, because especially because I do think my strength is characterization. So that, you know, then you think, okay, should I try something literary? But I love the tension of a thriller. So I don't know. I would love to maybe try horror, but that's difficult too. So I'm not sure. We'll see. I'm not saying no to anything.
Yeah, I think I'd like to read a book about a horror one from you, I think.
Yeah. I feel like maybe every book is getting a little darker, a little darker. So I just use it as therapy, really.
Because you mentioned there about the tension, and that was something I was going to ask you. Is it's as the book, I think there's tension in the book right from the beginning because of what happens, and it's unresolved, and there's so many questions around what happened on that night, and you know what happened. You know, why did he take so long to call? You know, why did Phoebe die when she didn't need to die? And you know, why was Becca in the car? And all these, there's lots of questions, and you know, what happened to Wyatt? And I just think as the book gets on, the tension gets so much, you know, it's palpable. Come the last few chapters, you're like, oh God, you know, how it's gonna. And you know, and there's the scene. I think that one of them, when they go to the memorial at the house, I thought that one was sort of like real sort of goosebumps on the arms, because there was bits in it that were really like awkward, you know, cringy, awkward. How was that? How was that to write? Was that how you wanted it to be? That you wanted it to be like so uncomfortable, I think is another word. Yeah, I think uncomfortable is good.
Okay. Yeah. I want people to feel something, you know, whether it's discomfort or unsettled. And the tension to this, you know, we're finally getting to this point of what happened. Those were my favorite. I mean, there's a scene in the end. I'm not going to say anything about it, but it's in a barn, and I think that was my favorite scene to write. And I love that immersive, you know, what's happening, and you have to keep reading. And as a reader, I'm a reader first and foremost. That's what I want. That's how I want to feel, that I cannot put this book down. I have to know what's going to happen, and hopefully feel a little uncomfortable in the process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's a lot of scenes in the book actually that are, the tension is really, because I think there's so many things in it, isn't there, that are unanswered. And I think I really liked that that sort of not knowing, you know, I like to be surprised. I like to be surprised when I'm reading, and I was surprised. That's all I'm going to say. Because we did have a little chat before where I could say what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's the tension. Laura, you've got a treat in store, I can say, when you get to the final stave. And I think that when a reader has invested that amount of time in, you know, getting to that point, they want a wow moment. You know, you want well, I didn't see that coming, or you know, or something. You need that feeling, don't you? And I think you really get that. And I think I just find it really interesting how you managed to sort of get that into I guess because it was such a wow for me, that was enough for that. That was like, okay, that's good. I was wowed.
Thank you. I mean, that's my hope. That is absolutely what I hope readers find. And like you, and I know I keep saying this, but I'm an avid reader, and I
Yeah.
love thrillers. I want to be surprised. I don't want to see what's coming. And it's hard because I can usually pick up on a twist. And
Yeah.
so if I read a book that completely kind of blows me away, I'm in awe. And that's what I had hoped to do with this. So I'm so glad that I did with you. So
Yeah,
a
definitely.
success. It was a success.
Well, I think I'm always, I don't think I would say, even if I guessed, I never think that it's that it would be a bad read for me, but I just think it's an awesome read if I don't guess. I think if I go and I don't see it coming at all, which I didn't with this one, sometimes I think I know who it is, but I think that's for me, that's sort of like the icing on the cake. I want to be wowed. I want to think, and I think some people don't. I know people who read the last page
Right.
before.
Right. They need to know.
Yeah.
I have a friend, an author friend, and she has to know. So
Mm.
she'll read the end. But I think for my dream for me is to have a reader read the book, not see the ending coming, and then want to go back and see the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that to me that's the goal.
I think I saw it very differently when I got to the end. That's all I'm
Oh
going to
yeah.
say.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think it made me feel like, because I didn't see it coming, I think it made me feel really differently about, and I was like, oh,
Okay.
this is yeah, really, really good. So actually I was going to ask you, but Sarah's asked, what are you allowed to say what the next book is? Are you allowed to give us anything? Any
Well,
breadcrumb?
it's it's going to be the same kind of genre, psychological thriller, kind of literary suspense. But this one revolves around newlyweds that are on a honeymoon in a very remote resort in the winter, and
In the winter.
everything goes wrong.
When you sort of when you said wedding and thing, I was thinking, oh, it's going to be summer, but it's not. Oh,
No,
that's good.
so I'm having a lot of fun with this one because
Yeah,
it's winter and it's pretty much in the woods. So I love the
in the
setting.
woods.
Yeah.
Oh, good. There's definitely going to be some dark bits in it then.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some things that I've been wanting to try for a while. So this is the one.
And when is that? When will we be seeing that one here in the UK?
Hopefully in 2025, but I'm not sure.
Oh, that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody sort of watching this evening who wants to get into writing themselves, I mean, obviously you did have a sort of a writing career, even though it was different. So writing fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Was it difficult for you to move from one to the other, or was it quite straightforward for you?
It was very easy in terms of the actual writing.
Yeah.
But getting an agent and getting a book deal was not easy. It took me 3 books,
Wow.
and yeah, it took years. It's taken years. So my advice is always to just keep going. Keep going, keep going. And it took me I was nervous to use my authentic writing voice. I wasn't sure how it would be received. And I wish that I had just kind of gone for it at the beginning. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say to any aspiring writer, is to keep going and just really be yourself in your voice.
And how has it felt, sort of, reading the reviews and seeing your book out because I think I'm right in saying that the UK cover, which I've got the arc of here, which I think is different to the US cover.
Yeah, I have a Canadian cover and a US cover, and all 3 of them are different.
Oh, really? Because there's one with like just the writing on.
I have I can show you. So this is the Canadian cover.
Right. That looks like a UK. I'm surprised that's not a UK one.
And then this is the American one.
Yeah.
So it's been surreal. I have to say, it's
Yeah.
been surreal. There's a lot of rejection in trying to be an author. Get rejection with agents, and then I actually signed with my agency with a different book that went to submissions and didn't get acquired. So I've had a lot of no's through the years. So this came out in Canada last week, and it came out in the US on Tuesday, and it's just been absolutely surreal to see it out there, see it on a bookshelf. You know, it's been incredible. I'm kind of pinching myself daily.
I bet. That's, that's because I think sometimes it is easy, but actually more than not, it isn't easy. And I think those sort of stories are really important for people to hear, because actually, so that's 2 books that you'd written before that have never gone anywhere.
Yeah.
So do you think one day they might, because now you're
I hope
published?
so. I hope so. I hope so. There's one. Yeah, I hope so.
And are they the same type of book, or are they different?
The one that I'm really happy with, and that actually got me an agent, is it's dystopian, and that's a tough genre to sell. I hope so, because I really love it. I wrote it during the pandemic. It was really influenced by the pandemic. It's about motherhood and survival, and kind of what if being a mother isn't enough to keep you going when your circumstances are really dire. So, but again, a very dark story. Although I'm not a dark person, but no, that's
I think we've all got darkness in us, haven't we? And I guess it's just how I think, I'm the same as a teenager. I read Stephen King and James Herbert, and as I said at the beginning, I watched American Werewolf in London when I was too young, and it gave me nightmares for weeks.
Right.
So I think I stopped reading horror when I was pregnant with my first child, because I couldn't. It really freaked me out. I think it was probably the hormones. But I do really like horror again now. I think it's a genre that I enjoy, and I enjoy it when it's unexpected. I think I like it when it sort of pops up in places that you don't think it's going to. So
I agree. I was the same. I loved it when I was young, had kids, was too afraid, and now I'm getting back into it in a big way. There is a book. I don't know if you've heard. There's a book coming out next week. A friend of mine, Tracy Sierra, she wrote Night Watching, which is getting rave reviews, and it is really scary, but it is incredible. It's incredible. It's the same kind of genre. It's like a literary horror. It's incredible. It's coming out in the UK in next week. Yeah.
Night Watching by
Tracy Sierra. It's about a mother who is kind of snowed into this old home with her 2 kids, and there's an intruder in the house. But it's also beautiful. It's also this beautiful story about motherhood and how far you're going to go to protect your kids, but it's also so scary. It's great.
Sarah says she's heard about that book. I haven't heard of. I think I have heard the title, but I haven't. Yeah, that sounds like not one that you want to read when you're in the house on your own
or with young kids.
No,
my kids are older now, so I can handle it.
Yeah, mine are as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, sort of crime-wise or otherwise, that you would recommend that you've read recently?
Well, I mean, one of the best things about being an author is I get all these advanced reading copies. And I know that's really annoying to kind of say, yeah, I love this book, but it's coming out in May. I do have a couple, though. I think she's a British author, Fiona McPhillips. So yes, this was dark academia, and it was excellent. And it's coming out in May. Really beautifully written. Yeah. And Tracy's is coming out next week, and I would absolutely recommend that everyone read it. It's so good. Night Watching.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Now I like the sound of that. So what have you got planned for the actually cheeky question, Sarah saying, do you have a favorite TV crime show? I imagine something dark.
So I'm watching True Detective.
Yeah, with Jodie Foster.
Amazing. Yes, I am absolutely loving it. Talk about setting. Talk about claustrophobia. It's dark. all the time. It's brilliant. What a brilliant setting for this eerie show. I love it. And my husband and I started watching Slow Horses.
Oh yeah, that's
Which
with
is
Gary
great.
Oldman.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're really enjoying that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've got that on my to
Yeah.
watch list.
It's a nice slow burn, and he's great, and Kristen Scott Thomas is in it, and she's great, and it's very good.
I definitely want to watch True Detective because it sort of reminds me of Wisting. Have you ever seen Wisting?
No, I don't know that one.
That's so good.
Okay, I should write it down.
Yeah. That's sort of got that's is it Norwegian? I want to say Norwegian. But it has Carrie Ann Fisher in it as well as in American. She sort of comes in and out, so it's sort of like I think it's Norwegian and English American. And the first series I like binged it in sort of like 2 days because it was just amazing. It was really dark, but really good.
I love that. I love when you get something and it hooks, it just sinks into you and you have to keep watching. I love art, TV and storytelling like that.
Yeah. No. So just before we're coming up to the end, I was wondering if you would you like to do your sort of elevator pitch for 27 minutes?
Again, yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah, just so that, why should we read it? I've read it and I think it's amazing. That's why I think you should read it. But
so do you want me to say what it's about or why I think you should read it?
Okay,
so it's a thriller about grief and long buried secrets and finally answering this question that's haunted this town for 10 years. On the night of a fatal car crash, why did it take the brother of the victim 27 minutes to call for help? What happened in those 27 minutes? Because if he had called earlier, she might still be alive. And I think you should read it because I think we need to talk about grief more.
Yeah, definitely. It is something that I think we don't talk about because, well, particularly in here because we're British and we don't talk about things like that. But actually,
we don't talk about it in Canada either.
Well, I think it's just one of those things that you don't talk about, isn't it? But actually, reading about, I think, with a lot of books, reading about something that's difficult to talk about can be a cathartic way of dealing with it, So hopefully that will help anybody who, can't talk about it, maybe experience it through reading. So
I've had readers kind of, get in touch and just say that it really resonated with them. And that's, that's a dream. So I don't think we talk about it enough. I think it's something that, and unfortunately, I mean, everyone's going to deal with it probably. And it doesn't have to be the loss of someone. It can be a marriage ending or a friendship ending. Just grieving something, grieving loss is really hard and universal. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been absolutely fascinating and I've really loved chatting to you, Ashley. It's been a real pleasure. And I cannot wait to see what comes next because I absolutely love 27 minutes. It's definitely up there on one of my books of the year, I can tell you.
Oh, so Karen, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for everybody for joining us and asking questions and join us again soon. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.